there's a cost split federal state of 75-25. We have been asking for that to be raised 100 to 0, which would lift a huge burden off of states. It's possible he did that for a couple of states. I have not seen it, but we'll come back to you. Listen, respecting the president, I did not see what he said. Respecting the office of the presidency, I just disagree. State and local aid is a huge game changer. It is the step when they interview the folks at the end of the George W. Bush administration and the early moments of the Obama administration, and you ask them what was the difference maker. In overwhelming amount of cases, it was they put money into state and local entities who in turn were able to put money on the street immediately. And money on the street, in my definition, includes keeping firefighters, police, healthcare, educators, EMS in their jobs. So I just, again, with great respect, it is a game changer for the good. Secondly, it has nothing whatsoever to do with blue or red or legacy. Think about a state like Florida that relies overwhelmingly on tourism, that does not have an income tax, therefore it is overwhelmingly relying on sales tax. That has, last I checked, a Republican governor. We wish them nothing but the very best in getting the pandemic under control and getting back on their feet, but that's an example of a state run by a Republican governor that will be in desperate need for state and local assistance. And that's not the only example. There are examples now littered across the country. It was one thing to say when the pandemic was firing in greater New York, you could look at, okay, well, gosh, those are blue states and they have been around longer and they've got some issues, by the way, in part that I got elected to fix and we were on our way to fixing. We got that taken care of. That's not the point. And so I just want to make sure that we say that as forcefully as possible. Matt, we'll get back to you in the cost share, which I think that's what it is, but we'll come back and let you know. Sir, do you have anything? Okay. Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Governor. A couple questions this morning from NJTV News. Some school districts, like Bayonne, have presented all virtual plans for school in September. Is the Department of Education considering those plans, even though they wouldn't have kids returning to school? Will New Jersey issue guidance like New York did that would require a classroom or school to shut down once 2 or more students or teachers are infected with COVID? 2 owners that we've spoken to of small businesses, one a gym and the other a diner, that have put safety precautions in place, think you're not holding big box stores to the same standards and that you're going against constitutional rights by trying to close them down. What do you say to these businesses? Why continue to keep gyms and indoor restaurants from legally reopening if they feel they've demonstrated that they can do it safely with protocols in place? Are there any duplications in positive tests reported? If someone tests positive at one location 1 week and 2 weeks later it gets retested, is that counted as 2 positives or not? And finally, you said last week that due to contact tracing, you have more information and are able to say things like outdoor dining is not a problem. Can you share more insights based on this information on how people are contracting COVID? Thank you.
I'll start, Judy, and turn to you. I would just say on school districts, our folks are in the process of reviewing all these plans, and we are taking each and every one of them deadly seriously, as you would hope we would. And there's no new news to report on that front other than to reiterate health, education, equity are the 3 big guiding principles, and to remind everybody this will not be a normal school year, no matter what your district looks like. Guidance, yes, the answer is yes, and we want to make sure we get that right. Other states have done that. We want to make sure we get that as right as possible, and we've got the benefit of a little bit of time on the clock, and given the way this pandemic behaves, by the way, it dictates so much of the time frame and so many of the moves as opposed to what we wish we could do. We will give that guidance, but we want to use all the time we have on the clock. I have nothing but sympathy for the small business owners. You said a gym and a diner. Yeah, I mean, and again, I saw some of the gym folks last night on CNN. We'll get there, I hope, God willing, sooner than later. But the nature of what you do in a gym and the nature of what you do in a diner are different than the nature of what you do in a big box store. In a big box store, you have to keep your mask on the whole time. You walk in, you do your business, and you leave. In a diner, you got to take your mask off to eat or drink. You're sedentary. You're indoors. We know for a fact, Judy and Ed, that indoors the virus is more lethal than outdoors. And gyms, by virtue of the activity, you're doing certain things in a place. And again, we have nothing but sympathy. We want to get there. And it would be really helpful if folks want us to get there, that they would help us and help us crack down on the non-compliant behavior, particularly in house parties. So I would like to say that the actions are the same, but they're not. Any observations on the last two quickly, which is, are there duplicates in positives? And secondly, on contact tracing, I think the general question is, I'm not sure I said it's specific to contact tracing, but the general comment is we have no evidence of any flare-up of the virus in any outdoor activities, protests, beaches, parks, outdoor dining. And so I'm not sure, I don't have more color on that other than I know we don't have any evidence of that. But any thoughts on either of those questions, folks?
Just very quickly, as far as the confirmed cases go, these are not duplicates, these are individuals, and one of the reasons you'll see our numbers sometimes change, for example, is because we're always calling back through the list to make sure that there aren't duplicates in there. So no, the confirmed cases are individual people, not tests.
How about I think that's all we got on the contact, on the outdoor stuff. Thank you for that. Dave, good afternoon.
Hi, Governor. The RT has inched down a little bit, according to the information we're getting today. Deaths are very low. The positivity rate is up slightly. Hospitalizations, ICUs, vents all remain very low. So we are seeing, though, this increase in cases. Do we have any sense of what's going on here? Some are saying this trend may signal a boost in herd immunity, with more people perhaps becoming positive, but fewer people really getting sick. Is it possible that this is a sort of a changing kind of situation with regard to this pandemic and perhaps not as dangerous? I don't know. Second question, if schools do mostly remote learning, or if they're forced to do all remote learning, a lot of people are very nervous about reopening schools at all. At what point will the state of New Jersey step in to try to figure out ways to help the families where they can't stay home with the kids? I know we touched on this a couple of weeks ago. There was concern about it. And do you think, honestly, Governor, that schools just may not open or may open for a week and then they're going to have to close? Is this something that you're concerned about? Have you thought about this? Final question, some school superintendents are complaining about constantly getting updated checklists. They say they're not being given enough time to adjust their plans properly as they try to get ready to reopen school. What is your message to them? Are the checklists changing because data and conditions are changing? Thank you.
I would say, and I'll invite Judy or Ed to come in on this. You know, it is encouraging to have one of the lowest spot positivity rates in the country. Even though it's up over the past couple of days, it's still low relative to any measure of acceptability and relative to other states. I'm not smart enough to give you an answer on herd immunity, but if there is herd immunity, it's probably first going to evidence itself in greater New York, including us. But secondly, I think it's a testament to the amount of tests we're doing an enormous amount of testing right now. I'll address the other two comments briefly, and then maybe ask you folks to come in on that. Don't be mad at me, Dave. I've got nothing really to add on the school front. We know that folks by district are taking this really seriously. Superintendents, educators, parents, kids, staff, other folks of interest. Whether it's hybrid, we have obviously given folks the flexibility, and that's another word that I think guides us to remote learn. But again, not going to be normal, as much flexibility as possible. The principles, health, education, equity, and again, to underscore that point to your question, Some folks just need to rely on in-person schooling a lot more than others. And so figuring out how to make that work, including the folks who are dual income, have to both go out and work, and making sure that that can be allowed in the confines of their home, is something that, you know, we'll look at that district by district, but nothing really new to report on that. Listen, I have sympathy with the supers. I hope they realize that we've never gone through this before as a state or as a nation or as a world. There's no playbook. Facts do evolve. I think that is partly. I hope that folks think that we listen and we're responsive. So we actually were asked by many supers to come up with a checklist to make sure that they hadn't been missing that. We have been asked to clarify face coverings. We have been begged by many to close the digital divide. Those are 3 developments that have occurred over the past month that were not part of the original parameters. I hope that's because we listened. In some cases, it's because the facts have changed, and we have to understand that the facts may continue to change, which is why having time on the clock is an asset for us to have to make all the decisions that we have to make. And we're trying to work as constructively as possible with all of the stakeholders in all the districts around the state. Thank you. We'll close you out, sir. Real quick, Dave. Oh, you're going to come back on RT and other things. Thank you.
Herd immunity is a general concept by which, as people become more and more immune, or more people become immune, it becomes harder for a virus or other infection to spread from person to person. And at some point, when enough people become immune, even if individuals become ill, it doesn't spread around and it doesn't begin to explode out like this has. The exact number of people that need to be immune for that to happen varies depending upon the disease, and the exact number that is needed for that to happen for COVID isn't completely understood, but it's thought to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 70 to 80% of the population would need to become immune before that would be safe, that basically you wouldn't get these outbreaks because of that. At this point, it is clear that we're nowhere near that high a level. So I am comfortable in saying that no, even in harder hit parts of New Jersey, we don't have anywhere near that number of people who are currently immune. Now, some people are likely immune, but nowhere near that number. Why we are seeing at this point relatively low hospitalizations and deaths is almost for sure a combination of the following factors. For one thing, we have shifted somewhat to a younger age group, so more younger people are getting this. And luckily, they tend not to get as ill or end up being hospitalized or, of course, dying. The other thing is, though, that hospitalizations and deaths definitely lag. It takes a while after people begin getting sick until they begin going to hospitalize and they begin dying. And if younger people are getting sick and they are not getting hospitalized, they are still often infecting others who may then down the road become ill, and those bad outcomes may happen. So to kind of answer the question, overall, what I think that we're seeing is this. I think we're seeing somewhat of a younger population getting ill, which in the short term is good. They're less likely to have serious outcomes. However, for the state as a whole, it is very concerning because those younger people can infect other people. They themselves can sometimes become sick. And while we're not seeing it yet, we're always trying to figure out what we might be seeing 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks down the road if this continues. Amen.
We're going to close out. We're going to go real quick just because I got to make this national governor's thing. Please.
Oh, hey, how you doing? Phil Andrews, New Jersey News Network. Governor, I need you to bring your seat back forward, fasten your seatbelt for this line of questioning because it's redundant, but I've got to ask you these questions on behalf of a lot of the small business owners. By nature, gyms are for health and mental well-being. Why would you not consider that essential? I know that over the last couple of months, you've had conversations with gym owners throughout the state. And you've been very impressed with some of the protocol that they've brought to you. Some have even invited you to come look at their gyms and their protocol. What would it take for those gym owners to have the same advantages as martial arts, dance studios, and gymnastics schools to be allowed to have their people come in? Because there's times when in those positions, they're sedentary also, especially during martial arts. When kids are sparring, other kids are sitting around watching. And the final question is, because of the nature of the way gyms are built, they have great contact information. Wouldn't that be an ideal situation for contact tracing? Because you were able to get the contact information. That's it.
So we're good.
By the way, you're never supposed to give out your wife's actual age.
Yeah. Thank you. She'll probably remind me of that when I get home. So Listen, I just repeat this on gyms, and I'll be brief because we're covering ground that we've covered even today. Completely get it. It's mental and physical health. Get that. Remember, they are open and available for private appointments with either individuals or with bubbles, which is typically a family, but at least a group of people who have been living together. Secondly, it's not a forever and always. I mean, I like going to the gym. I mean, we want to get there. Your point on contact information is a good one, an outstanding one, and that's an asset. I can't give you a timing. What would it take? I think it would take a sustained, and I think, maybe we're at the front end of that, a sustained series, at least 7 days, rolling averages of numbers that are really good. And it would be also good to see the rest of the nation get themselves under control. And you rightfully point out, and I've personally had interactions with folks. I'll give you a shout out to the guys at Atlantic Health who have an outpost in Red Bank. And it's Kevin McHugh, I think. Kevin's been very responsible. He's one of the guys who represents the industry. We take the protocols that they're proposing and very seriously. We want to get there. And I want to also commend, while there are a few that have been loud and have been challenging, the overwhelming amount of the folks who operate these things have been really good and responsible. And we have nothing but sympathy, and we want to get there. I promise you we want to get there. If we get sustained numbers that are in a good place, and we don't feel like the rest of the country could come back on us and come in through the back door, God willing, we get there. So with that, I'm going to mask up, if that's okay. Joe's already there. I want to thank Judy and Ed, as always, for your leadership and for enlightening us so well. Pat, as always, Jared, Matt, Mahen, and the whole team will be back with you at 1 o'clock on Friday, virtual tomorrow. And Joe, a particular treat to have you with us. Two quick thoughts as we leave. Number one, to everybody, thank you for what you've been doing. Thank you for your patience. That's probably a word that's run through our entire lives over the past 4 or 5 months. Now with a storm added to that. Patience when you were staying at home. Patience as we've begun to open up the state. And you're looking for more guidance on things like indoor dining or gyms, etc. And then secondly, specific to the storm, everybody stay safe. Check on somebody who's vulnerable or old. 211 or ready.nj.gov are two places I would suggest. I think Pat would join me in suggesting those are good spots to go. Joe, I think, would agree. Know that for the just under 1 million households that are out, and that number's coming down probably as we've sat here for the past hour, a lot of you will be back up and running in the next day or two, but some of you will not be. And so please bear with the electric service providers. If you've got any issues with somebody vulnerable, get on that phone number, get on that website, and everybody stay safe. God bless you.